is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path.
First reading. A reading from the first letter of John, chapter 4, verses 11 to 18. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also must love one another. No one has ever seen God, yet if we love one another, God remains in us, and his love is brought to perfection in us. This is how we know that we remain in him and he in us, that he has given us of his Spirit. Moreover, we have seen and testified that the Father sent his Son as Savior of the world. Whoever acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God remains in him and he in God. We have come to know and to believe in the love God has for us. God is love, and whoever remains in love remains in God and God in him. In this is love, brought to perfection among us, that we have confidence on the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment, and so one who fears is not yet perfect in love. The word of the Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, chapter 6, verse 45 to 52. After the 5,000 had eaten and were satisfied, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and precede him to the other side toward Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. And when he had taken leave of them, he went off to the mountain to pray. When it was evening, the boat was far out on the sea, and he was alone on shore. Then he saw that they were tossed about while rowing, for the wind was against them. About the 4th watch of the night, he came toward them, walking on the sea. He meant to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and cried out. They had all seen him and were terrified, but at once he spoke with them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." He got into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely astounded. They had not understood the incident of the loaves. On the contrary, their hearts were hardened. The Gospel of the Lord.
My dear friends, in this week after Epiphany, when we reflect about the revelation of Jesus to the world, the Gospel passage today presents to us Jesus being revealed in another miracle, and that is the calming of the sea. My dear friends, turbulent times, challenges, disturbances, and all kinds of storms of life, my dear friends, are moments where we get lost and become helpless. We are right now going through a storm of life, my dear friends, the whole world not knowing what to do in this pandemic. We as Christians in this country, my dear friends, have gone through a difficult spell of time because of various challenges and difficulties to our faith. In those moments, my dear friends, these storms of life, these disturbances, my dear friends, should be a time that we recognize Jesus. When Jesus was walking on the lake and coming towards the boat, the disciples were perplexed. Their minds were dull, as it is mentioned in the Gospel. But my dear friends, when Jesus said, "Courage, it is I," my dear friends, it is a moment of recognition by the disciples. We need to courageously recognize Jesus in the storms of life. The disturbances, the challenges, the difficulties of life, my dear friends, should not make us dull and helpless and lost, but rather we need to find out, recognize, and know that Jesus' help is there always. Therefore, again, the word courage, it is I. We need to recognize Jesus. And my dear friends, God's love is perfected in us, as it is mentioned in the first reading today by St. John. God's love, my dear friends, is perfected in us, not just because the word love is a fashionable thing, but my dear friends, God's love is perfected in us because we love God and we love one another. And that kind of love, my dear friends, should be the courageous thing that we need to do during difficult and stormy times, because love is perfected in us. Therefore, all kinds of weaknesses, the challenges, the restrictions, the difficulties that we are facing through, my dear friends, can be courageously met if we have love. Love of God, love of neighbor. And therefore, my dear friends, the word courage is an impetus for our action of love towards reaching God and reaching towards one another.